stand in our way, and our golden age has just begun.
This is Human Events with Jack Posobiec.
Now it's time for everyone to understand what America First truly means. Welcome to the Second American Revolution.
All right, folks, Jack Posobiec back live, Phoenix, Arizona. Ladies and gentlemen, anyone that knows me and knows the work that Human Events Daily does day in and day out knows that the conservative movement never stops. And the fuel that keeps me, the show, and the work going is, of course, Blackout coffee. For years, Blackout has been my coffee of choice, and I know so many of you want to get on the train as well. And by the way, the messages that we're getting in from people saying they love Blackout, they love the taste, they love the flavor. Look, I got to say, the product really just speaks for itself because it's America in a cup. Blackout was founded on Christian values rooted in family and built on the belief that hardworking Americans deserve better than the corporate swill. Blackout Coffee is a family business that roasts every batch right here in the USA. Two roasts that you got to try: Morning Reaper, a smooth medium roast that kicks off your day without bitterness. And for dark roast lovers like myself, Brutal Awakening, a bold, rich roast with deep flavor that'll keep you sharp and alert. Perfect for serving friends and family around the holidays. Because let's face it, the best gatherings start with the best coffee. So here's the deal. Go to blackoutcoffee.com/POSO and use promo code POSO for 20% off your first order. That's blackoutcoffee.com/POSO. Support a company that shares your values, supports American jobs, and fuels your freedom. One strong cup at a time. So, folks, we're digging in more on this Ukraine deal. Will it last? Will it be agreed to? I wanted to bring Mike Benz on now from the Foundation for Freedom Online. Benz, you've done the yeoman's work on explaining why Ukraine really became this focal point so much, going all the way back to President Trump's first impeachment, Hunter Biden, the Burisma dealings. And I guess I wanted to say, Benz, is that if this thing is actually to wind down, this is going to be a huge problem for a lot of people in power, both in the United States and across Europe, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a little complicated, though, because I do think that they do want the kinetic military activity that Russia is conducting to wind down, in the sense that I think that some of the, well, not some, but almost all of the exuberance in the early initial 2022 forays, when there was a thought that actually Russia had misstepped and that they were actually much weaker than NATO feared they might be, and it looked like Ukraine was having some early victories. There was, I think, a hope that Ukraine could militarily take this all the way and then end up with a regime change inside of Moscow and another Boris Yeltsin resurrected and put in Putin's place. Instead, Ukraine is now reporting loss after loss. Every update I seem to see on it seems to be another territory, another town, another very one-sided victory for Russia on the military battlefield. And I do think that the goal of the peace, there's kind of a Trump goal and there's a blob goal for peace. I think the Trump goal is to have a lasting peace. I think the blob goal is to have a temporary peace and then to use that peace to build up a larger military presence to eventually either win a paramilitary covert war or a full-on war the next time something like this can be provoked through another 2014-style Maidan-style coup in another kind of Russian satellite area. But basically the whole play here is about Eurasia. And that's what this is all about. It's about the $75 trillion worth of natural resources inside of Russia. It's about control over the entire Eurasian landscape. And ultimately, it'll be about regime change inside of Russia to make that happen, as well as the pacification of all the Russian military support for countering many NATO commercial and political activities in Africa, in Central Asia, and to a lesser extent, well, I wouldn't even count really Latin America anymore at this point. But
so we are hearing, by the way, I wanted to just throw out just before we went live today, and this is what I've been saying all morning, the White House has come out and said, well, additional discussions are now going to be required among Ukraine, the United States, and Russia as the countries work to hammer out this deal. So Dan Driscoll, of course, we know, is meeting with Russian officials in Abu Dhabi right now. Lavrov, what did Lavrov said? It could be rejected if the terms are fundamentally different to the understanding that was reached during the Trump-Putin summit in Alaska a few months ago. I was actually had the opportunity to attend that summit. It was really incredible to just be there and be in the room, at least when the meeting got started with Lavrov, et cetera. And what are we also hearing? Zelensky wants to bring the Europeans in. And I think that's kind of what went on here because, Benz, I think there's a lot of story here that we're told that Vice President J.D. Vance came in and he's the one that really got Driscoll into the new position as this point man for these discussions, for these negotiations. They knew that the previous discussions had really been at loggerheads. So he said, why not send this guy over and let's just sit down with the Russians and hammer something out. But it seems, though, that when the Ukrainians get involved, they always want to bring in Europe. And when they bring in Europe, that always seems to bring in the blob as well.
Oh, completely. I mean, if
and
you
that's
remember,
because that's NATO, because that's where all of NATO is.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, Trump is not negotiating with Ukraine on this peace deal. He's negotiating with Great Britain and the captured, parts of France and Germany, who sort of work themselves into Zelensky's body to negotiate for him, because that is who is picking up the slack. Europe is now trying to create its own army. We just had Anders Fogh Rasmussen, the head of NATO during Obama. I'm going to read what he tweeted this morning. I'm now calling for Europe to deploy up to 20,000 troops behind Ukraine's front lines, establish an air shield with 150 combat aircraft, and unlock frozen Russian assets, meaning seize Russian assets, which would cause an absolute firestorm in the international markets and make it unlikely that any sane sovereign country would ever invest in Europe again, if not directly under the barrel of a gun. But that is the animating spirit of France, Germany, the UK, to some extent Norway, the Dutch. It's the EU, and that's Soros town. This is where all this reconstruction money is coming, apart from the U.S., which so you basically have Democrats, the remaining Never Trump Republicans, and Europe working into Zelensky's body to tell him what to do and not to do. And the way they've changed the terms from this deal are just hilarious. I mean, right now Ukraine is just completely subsumed in this multi-billion-dollar corruption scandal where they're finding $100 million and $100 million in embezzled cash, golden toilets, the highest levels of the Ukrainian government, from the folks in their energy ministry to, would appear to be the second and third in command of Zelensky himself. Meanwhile, Ukraine has still not held a vote in over 5 years. They've canceled elections indefinitely. That remains. Meanwhile, just I think Libernet just posted a giant tapestry of the German censorship industrial complex, and I found it humorous that one of the 330 German government-funded censorship organizations in the report is an institution called Radar, which is part of the USAID censorship network. And Radar was taking German taxpayer dollars to monitor social media discourse in Ukraine to stop what it called false narratives that delegitimized the Kiev government. So all stops are being pulled to shore up this kind of seemingly coke-addled, dysfunctional, corrupt government as its corpse is propped up and marionetted by a bunch of EU blobsters and banksters.
Well, and one of the big pressure points on this is something that you've been talking about here for years, and this came out publicly, and you don't hear any coverage of this really in the West, that Zelensky's justice minister and the Minister of Justice, Minister of Energy, both resigned just days ago, like 2 weeks ago in Kiev, on the backs of a $100 million kickback scheme involving, you guessed it, the state-owned energy company and Energo Atom, which is actually their nuclear company. And the ringleader of the scheme was, of course, one of Zelensky's close business partners. I mean, you just can't make it up, can you?
No, you certainly can't. But what I thought was so interesting, and I'm just trying to pull up the exact language here, but the part of the original Trump proposal, I believe, to Ukraine was that there would be a full audit. Part of the conditions of the deal would be a full audit of aid money to Ukraine. And then as the scandal unfolded, the language was changed to instead offer an amnesty, that essentially all crimes committed by the Kiev government, if they agreed to this peace deal, would be effectively absolved or pardoned, so that there would be no Truth and Reconciliation Committee or transitional justice in a post-Zelensky. So they're trying to set the stage for terms in which the Zelensky mafia will feel inclined to, as part of the peace terms, go back to being something even nominally pretending to be a democracy, i.e., some path to holding a vote on an election again. But everyone knows Zelensky would lose, and undoubtedly the successor Justice Department or Justice Ministry would be saddled with all of these.
And they'd have to figure out
indictments.
exactly what to do. Right back, Jack Posobiec, Mike Benz.